From our studios in New York, here again is Stone Phillips.
No significant progress to report tonight in the search for the wreckage of JFK Jr.'s plane. Now that we know how quickly it fell from the sky, it is possible that no large pieces will ever be found, which would, of course, make the investigation into the crash that much more difficult. What might have gone wrong? Tonight, Dennis Murphy has some possible theories.
What they're facing essentially on the bottom is a water temperature of around 52 degrees. The visibility is less than 8 feet.
Divers were back in the water today fighting chill and currents, looking for what investigators call targets.
We have a theoretical splash point which we feel very good about.
NBC News is reporting that sonar operators see a target roughly matching the size and shape of the plane's fuselage. But so far, divers haven't located it. So far, only washed up and floating debris has been recovered. No piece larger than 3 by 3.5 feet.
But I'm sure you could draw a conclusion based on the debris that we've been bringing in, which is fragmented.
The search is concentrating on 2 primary areas. One of them, 7.5 miles from shore, is the place where the investigators plotted the plane would likely hit the water, and where sonar readings are seeing something the team wants to know more about. The second area is closer to shore. If it's debris, an investigator theorized it may have been carried there by tidal currents. Tonight, a man who said he was a Red Cross volunteer showed bits of debris he found off of Vineyard Beach, something that looked like foam insulation and plastic shards. Gregory Schaefer said he will turn the pieces into the Coast Guard for its opinion.
You look for anything that doesn't flow, and then all of a sudden if you see some piece or object come in, you go for it.
And there were new details today about the plane's final approach.
The airspeed readout, according to the computer, was 160 knots.
About 20 miles out, it descended a little faster than usual, climbed slightly, and then came the catastrophic plunge.
The airplane started a turn to the right and entered at a rapid rate of descent, possibly greater than 5,000 feet a minute.
The question tonight is, based on Kennedy's experience, based on what the radar fixes tell us about his plunge from the sky, what happened in those final minutes of flight? Was it a mechanical problem like an engine failure? Or, as one experienced pilot tells us, was it this? Something all flyers dread, the dead man's spiral. A pilot can get himself into this terrifying fix with just a few moments of disorientation.
Dead man's spiral is essentially an out-of-control descending turn where it gets tighter and tighter with higher and higher rates of speed.
Jim Parker is a pilot of great experience. We hired him to take us up in his single-engine plane and show us just what he was describing, the dead man's spiral.
Okay, Bob, what we want to simulate here is this tendency for the airplane to lose control.
With Dateline's Dr. Bob Arnott, himself a seasoned light plane pilot flying from the front seat controls, Parker gave us a graphic lesson in how quickly a novice pilot like John Kennedy could have gotten in trouble. It's speculation, but to Parker, a plausible disaster scenario that explains those precipitous radar readings in JFK's plunge.
Well, as we start to descend, here we stay disoriented. Of course, the speed starts to build up.
First, the wing dips a little, something not unusual, and a pilot flying in the dark and not using his instruments might not even notice it. As Bob dipped the wing, he remembers the change from no longer flying straight and level to be all but imperceptible. Then the nose went down, and the wing dipped even further. Now he could feel it, what jet pilots call the G-force.
Whoa! G's are amazing! Ah! Oh! Wow!
A pilot's natural reaction is to stop the dive by pulling back on the stick, the pilot's wheel, and get the nose up. But watch what happens when you do that. The plane falls down and away in a steep dive. Bob, a pilot with 5,000 hours, says he's never felt anything like it in all his years of flying.
Nothing prepares you for what you feel when you're in this dead man spiral. And you just feel the blood drain from your head. You feel yourself become very, very heavy, and you know something is terribly, terribly wrong.
If pilot Jim Parker is right about his theory, could JFK Jr. have pulled himself out of the dive? Possibly. Parker, in the back seat, talked Bob through the maneuvers that would pull the plane out of the spiral. A turn of the steering column and a push of the rudder, and the plane stops its dizzying descent. Sounds easy, but at night, it would have been a challenge even for the best of pilots. And Jim Parker is one, a stunt pilot who does these kind of acrobatic maneuvers for the movies. What's more, his single-engine plane is specially built to take the stresses of radical moves far better than JFK Jr.'s light aircraft. But it may not have been pilot error at all. Maybe something happened to the propeller, or was there a fire on board, or perhaps the electrical system failed. Recovered pieces could help experienced crash investigators answer those questions. Or we just may never know. This afternoon in Hyannisport, Ted Kennedy went sailing. Ethel Kennedy walked. On Long Island, Caroline Kennedy rode a bike. The family is discussing a memorial service for their lost loved ones later this week. In a tragedy of intricate ironies and echoes, today it was reported that the registration documents for the plane, soggy but legible, washed ashore on the private beach in front of the Martha's Vineyard house owned by John Kennedy Jr.
The manufacturer of the Piper Saratoga plane JFK Jr. was flying says it has sent its own investigator to the scene to help the NTSB and FAA with any technical questions.
Coming up, a mother slaps her daughter, and the daughter takes from our studios in New York. Here again is Stone Phillips.
As many New Yorkers will tell you, it was not all that unusual to see JFK Jr. around the city, biking, rollerblading, one of the crowd. But of course, not really. He was a Kennedy, and with the name came fame and fortune, and a burden few of us will ever understand. He wanted to be just like any other young man. We wanted him to be a myth. Here's John Hockenberry.
Tributes for a complicated life. Complicated feelings over a death too soon, reduced to flowers, pictures, tears.
You'd say hello to him, he'd say hello to you. He wasn't pushy, he was just nice. Nice, that's all you can sum it up. In Jewish, they call it a mensch, you know?
Even Paul Blaustein, JFK Jr.'s plumber down the street, said that the man wanted to live his life simply. He was a man who wanted to be left alone. Perhaps it was that he needed time to think while he took his careful steps along a perilous path of growing up, so watched and wondered about. His famous mother tried to keep it simple for both her children, and they took those lessons to heart. They claimed to want lives on a normal scale, knowing that as Kennedys, this would be a lifetime challenge. What is normal scale for a boy whose scrapbook is part of our national history? His friends said he wanted things simple. What he could control would be normal. What he could not would be handled with patience and grace.
I don't think that I've seen as many of you in one place since they announced the results of my first bar exam, so...
Oh, he knew how to be larger than life. In so many things, his life was lived in an unimaginable bubble of privilege. The courtside seats, he was center stage for history itself. But when asked about his future, about his unusual life at the center of things, about his father, his answers were always the same. My future is private, he would say. My life is not that unusual. And my father was a normal father. My family, a normal family. Did anyone ever believe him? Here in downtown Manhattan, where John and Carolyn lived in a spacious loft building, the pile of remembrances has been growing since Saturday.
The great, beautiful son. This is what he represented to us. Everyone's great, beautiful son. We didn't know him personally, but we feel like we did because so many of us have great, beautiful sons.
Is there a simplicity here that he would have appreciated?
I think this is sweet. I think he would have been touched by it. I'm glad to see that it's not really a spectacle, you know, because I think that would have really not been so nice.
And not been him?
No. Not been him.
This memorial is not overwhelming like the one for Princess Diana, or filled with a prayerful agony like the memorials for the children killed at Columbine High School or those killed in Oklahoma City's bombing. It's always true that anything Kennedy draws a crowd, but here we kept it simple. Just like JFK Jr. said all along, keep it simple. That's what he wanted us to believe. We finally learned to believe him.
One other note tonight. Remember that famous photograph of young John playing under the president's desk in the Oval Office? It's an enduring image of father and son. Well, the man who snapped that photo, Aaron Stanley Tredick, died yesterday at the age of 77. He captured many lasting images of Camelot, but knew he would be remembered most for that photo of young John. And now here's Katie Couric with a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Today. Katie?
Thanks, Stone. We'll continue coverage of the investigation into what caused JFK Jr.'s plane to go down, plus summer camp for grandparents and their grandkids.